Welcome back. So, Carl, we're having a discussion here about the mechanism. And one of the things that I've seen and that I've got in front of me are numbers about absentee ballots. So I see that in a lot of races, a great majority of the races actually, the Democrats have almost a 2-to-1 margin on absentee ballots when we all have an absentee ballot program. I'm concerned that what the Democrats are actually doing is they're going into institutions or apartment houses and they're saying to people, I will help you. I will, sign here. I will get you an absentee ballot. And then they're going back with those absentee ballots and saying to institutionalized people or whatever, look, you need to vote. It's your duty, and I'll help you. Am I wrong in that? I look at these numbers. How can it be 2-to-1 in these places?
No, I would not be a bit surprised, Ralph, if that indeed was part of the Democrat operation. How extensive it is, I don't know, but that's one explanation for that gap. Let's be honest. Republicans have yet to warm up to early voting and absentee voting. They still like to go on Election Day. And that's fine, but things happen on Election Day. Your car breaks down, you get called into work, you get sick, a spouse or a child gets sick, the weather's bad. There's all kinds of things that can happen that prevent you from getting out to vote. Let's be honest. Donald Trump for a long time urged people not to early vote.
I know.
Through the mail.
I know.
He's changed his tune since, but there's still an awful lot of Republicans who remember him saying it's corrupt, don't do it. And so there's a lot of factors here, but Democrats are very well organized. They know where the votes are, and
Carl, you've talked about you've talked about early voting for years, and the Republicans still seem to fail. In Amherst, this year in our supervisors race, when I saw the early numbers at 9:15 come in, they were the early vote and the absentee vote, and I go, "Woo, we're down 1,500." Dan Gagliardo on Election Day, his vote was equal to that of Sean Lavin. The Republicans lost the race with early voting and absentee voting.
And that's happening across the country, as you
know,
Bob.
Is.
I mean, in the last Pennsylvania Senate race, Fetterman started off when the polls opened on Election Day with 600,000 more votes in hand than Oz. I mean, that's a huge deficit. So, again, I think it starts at the very top with the president encouraging it and all the way down through every party organization and then also doing programs, Ralph, the way you described your suspicion about how Democrats are doing it. There's no reason why Republicans couldn't do the same thing.
Let me just point out a couple of numbers to you. So in the countywide race of Hardwick versus Christine Zarnick, the absentee votes for Hardwick are 6,625. The absentee votes for Christine are 2,618. Now, she lost that race, 52% to 41%, but the absentee ballots are way out of line. They're not anywhere close. I mean, their absentee ballots are 3-to-1. She didn't lose the race 3-to-1, but that's where the absentees are. So, Jeannie Vinyl versus Christina Coyle-Lenz. The absentees for Jeannie Vinyl were 946, and for Christina Coyle-Lenz, 388. Again, almost 3-to-1.
3-to-1.
She didn't lose the race by 3-to-1, but something screams out to me about these absentee ballots.
Ralph, it might just be the time now after this last election and those numbers you gave and past numbers for party organization, the Republican Party organization, to do a post-election autopsy, not just in Erie County, but across the state and even across the country. What do they have to do to avoid what happened Tuesday night? Some of it is message, being on the right message, the right focus, but some of it's mechanics, voter registration and absentee ballots. And what are we not doing now with those two things that we can do and strengthen our organization in terms of voter registration and absentees? Because as everybody in your room knows right now, the biggest determinant for someone deciding their vote is party registration. If you've got them registered as a Republican, your chances of getting them to vote for your Republican candidate soar. in comparison to somebody who might be a registered Democrat or even not registered and just a blank.
Yep.
What do we have to do to shore up those two parts of the equation to win an election?
Yeah, to Ralph's point, yours, Carl, I'm just looking at the numbers, again, in Amherst for supervisor. Early voting, absentee voting, Lavin got 4,672. The Gagliardo's 3,106. 1,500 votes.
Yeah, and that's closer than some of the other ratios that
That's correct.
That's
correct.
So Bob did a great job in Amherst. I mean, Amherst came a long way. It wasn't successful, and we're all disappointed about that because that would have been the huge win compared to where Amherst has been. And Bob's made a great deal of inroads in Amherst, and I'm expecting that he's not slowing down. He's going to continue, and that's going to benefit us. But we need to do this postmortem. We need to go through these numbers. We need to have people sit down and look at how we increase our numbers in early voting, how we increase or what the heck is going on with absentees. And to your idea about registration, we need a registration drive.
Absolutely need a registration drive.
And the templates are out there. I mean, the templates for voter registration, successful voter registration drives, successful absentee ballot, early mail ballots are out there. It's just a matter of doing the research, finding the ones that would work best in Western New York, and bringing them home and setting up an organization.
Well, you got that young guy in Pennsylvania a year ago. I think his name was Presser.
Scott Pressler.
Thank you, Russ. I mean, he registered 50,000 or more new Republicans in the presidential race in 24, and it was enough to carry Pennsylvania for Trump. I mean, I tried to reach out to the guy back in July to see if we could get him in here to talk to us about what he did. I mean, he was going to places like the NRA meetings, Carl, and making sure he was getting them registered, but then we still got the problem of getting him out to vote. But, I mean, we should talk to this young man and figure out what he did.
Yes.
And it's going to be critical, I think, to Elise Stefanik being able to win this gubernatorial election, which I believe she will win. But, let's not make it a close race.
Yeah, I read about that guy, Bob, in Pennsylvania. Yeah. I thought the same thing. We should be talking to him. The guy is a one-man machine when it comes to registering voters. It's amazing what he's been able to accomplish.
Carl, Russ again. I was just wanted to know, from your experience, do you know whether or not younger people, let's say 18 to 25, are more likely to want to vote by mail and absentee, or are they just somewhat integrated into the rest of the demographics?
I don't have any data to support an opinion one way or another, Russ, but I would just think with the way they've been brought up, in this the age, the electronic age and the virtual age, that they'd be very comfortable doing early voting, and it's just, as opposed to showing up at the polls. And I would think that again, if you had a program that's centered on that demographic, and you went to them and you said, we're going to make it easy on you, and I think a lot of them would take that path.
So look, Carl, we were successful. It wasn't all bad. We were successful in Hamburg. We were successful in Orchard Park. We were successful in Lancaster. But even where we were successful, so for example, let's take our best success was Orchard Park. Joe Liberti got 59.39% of the vote to his opponent's 40.5% of the vote. So Joe Liberti was very successful, 59 to 40. And yet, the absentees for the Democrat were 232 compared to Joe's 178. So even where we win by big margins, they have the advantage on the absentees. And, I just think that's something we have to look at. But I do want to talk about our successes, and then I unfortunately want to talk about some of our failures. But we did win in Kathy Hochul's hometown.
That was great. Yep, absolutely. That was a message heard around the state that her hometown now has a Republican supervisor, and a Republican board, for that matter.
A Republican board, a Republican conservative board, Carl.
And a conservative town justice.
So we were able to help push the Republicans over the line, which is what conservatives are able to do here in Erie County, and we were able to do that in Hamburg. We were able to do that in Lancaster. Lancaster, again, is another town where we have been strong. We have strong leaders there. Both the Republican and conservative chair are very strong leaders. They pick good candidates. They work them hard, and the success is there. Unfortunately, Cheektowaga was a very tough disappointment.
Very much so.
4 races. We lost 4, Carl. So
yep.
How does that happen? I mean,
It happened, but it happened to other places too, Ralph. I mean, it happened in Tonawanda. It happened in the city of Tonawanda where the Republican mayor got defeated. I know it's in Niagara County, but North Tonawanda, the same thing. They flipped the whole board. All 4 aldermen lost. You say, well, what's going on here?
Well, Carl, don't you think that there may have been, an influence, a national influence on these local races? I mean, you had a government shutdown going on, 3 weeks leading into the election. And I'll tell you what, one of the things we heard in Amherst from our candidates and from our volunteers who were knocking on doors is, that 7 to 10 days leading into election, people were talking about the SNAP program being suspended. And, I think that may have been something that, I look at the numbers in Amherst, and Democrat women came out in significantly greater percentages than Democrat men. And was it the anti-Trump? Was it the federal shutdown? Was it the SNAP program being suspended? Did that drive the Democratic female vote out? And we know right now, Carl, that the face of the Democratic Party are the female Democrats. And did that drive them out in higher percentages? Because when I look at the numbers in Amherst, Democratic women are the reason we lost.
Bob, there's no doubt that the Democrats have been very successful in supercharging their turnout based on send a message to Trump. We hate Trump. And no question they've done that. And that's what makes it so disturbing, that they can supercharge their turnout based on Trump. But if Trump's not on the ballot for us, his people don't show up in the same numbers. That, like I said, that's a structural problem that is not fixed. Is going to be very problematic in the next 2 cycles. But yeah, I think even though this is the Schumer shutdown, this is a result of the Democrats, 5 or 6 Democrats not willing to break with Schumer.
Yeah, but Democratic voters didn't believe that. But they blame Trump.
Sure. Well, here's the problem. People seeking to say Republicans control the White House, they control the House of Representatives, and they control the Senate. Okay? Well, yes and no. We control the Senate, but we don't control the filibuster. People don't know what the filibuster is. There's a good percentage of this country who can't name the 3 branches of the federal government, for God's sake, let alone describe what a filibuster is.
You're absolutely right.
It gets blamed on the party in power, and that's right now, that's us. We haven't been able to counter that, but no, there's no question that there's a general anti-Trump message in everything the Democrats do. Just read Kathy Hochul's response today in the paper to Elise's announcement, all about Trump. They've already started to hang Trump around her neck from day one.
Carl, we saw it in Amherst. I mean, they're running for the town board. They're running on issues like parks and highway and water and sewer, and the Democratic literature goes out there. You can't vote for Gagliardo. In fact, they called him Magliardo. I mean, come on. What does that have to do with your sewer, your water, and your streets being plowed? But that's what the Democrats do.
It motivates their voters, and they know it, and they're going to continue to do it as long as Trump is in the picture. But that's and you're right, Bob. The Democrat women now are the real strong ideological base of the Democrat Party.
No doubt about it.
Carl, is it also true that Republican women are not all that keen on Trump?
Yeah, probably a higher percentage than men. I know a lot of Republican women who have no use for Trump. They don't like his style. They like his policies, but they don't like his style. And it's really tough to get past that, not just with women, but men, too. I got a good friend who just, the other day said, well, it's all this shutdown is all Trump's fault. I said, Dave, what are you talking about? Come on. This is in the Senate. Trump's got nothing to do with it. But he's tough. It's tough to get by his personality sometimes.
It's one of those things where don't confuse me with the facts. I know what I want to believe.
We're in this discussion about how to fix things. So, Carl, not only did we not have a great night in Erie County, but that was true for Republicans across the country, isn't it true?
Yeah, there were a lot of races. Obviously, the high-profile races were Virginia and New Jersey. where both Republican gubernatorial candidates took a pretty good beating. And in Virginia, they saw fit to elect a guy, their chief law enforcement officer, as Attorney General, who openly talked about killing a Republican opponent in the legislature and then killing his wife and their children and urinating on their graves.
How does that possibly happen today? What's your explanation for how someone who actually talked about killing somebody can win the election?
For Attorney General.
For Attorney General.
I think it's because for Democrats, elections are about gaining and retaining power, first and foremost. And let everything else be damned, basically. I really do think a large segment of the Democrat Party has reached that point. At least, certainly that's true in Virginia. Okay? I'll keep it just to the borders of Virginia. But how anybody could vote for a person like that, especially in the position of Attorney General, is beyond me, other than it's about gaining and retaining power.
Carl, when that story broke back in the summer, they talked about this guy getting out of the race. He didn't get out of the race, and he wins.
And not only that, Bob, but not one single Democrat official, party official, elected official in the entire state called on him to step down. They all rallied around and circled the wagons around the guy. That tells you volumes about the Democrats and how they view elections and how they view the importance of gaining and keeping power.
You know, people who don't remember, some might not remember Charles Krauthammer, but I had the good fortune of knowing him. And I remember talking to him one time, and he says, look, Russ, it's really very simple. The perception of Republicans to Democrats they're well-meaning, but everything they say doesn't work. The difference is that the Democrats think that the Republicans are evil. That's the difference. It's not a question of, a policy. It's a question of whether they think one has to be avoided at all costs.
Well,
Russ, I think you're right, and I think Charles Krauthammer was absolutely right about that. I used to love listening to that guy. He was in a league of his own. But I think it's a very true statement. But not only did we lose in those high-profile Virginia races, but there are a whole bunch of other less visible races that show what a bad night it was. There were three justices in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, all Democrats who retained their positions. There were two Democrats elected to the Public Service Commission in Georgia. First time ever Democrats got elected there. So there are examples of this all over the country. It was just a bad night. It was overall a very bad night. And again, it's a big warning flag. It's interesting how the narrative and the pendulum changes so quickly in American politics. It wasn't but a few months ago.
Carl, we have a caller that has a question for us, so let's take that caller's question. So, Dan, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here.
So this is Dan from Tonawanda. So, Dan, what's your question?
Well, it's good to be back with the A-team. I don't really have a question, but I want to make a statement. First of all, the city of Tonawanda, I'm a conservative, a hardcore conservative, but I voted for all the Democrats. I'll tell you why, because John White he's Republican in name only. The truth is that Janet Cook was really running the city, in my opinion. They all know me. I'm from the city of Tonawanda. But I got to tell you, Strasburg's going to be a great person. He's good conservative. He's going to look out for the taxpayer. And Dean Lilac is a judge. He's already been there for 12, 13 years. He's done a phenomenal job. He'll continue to do a phenomenal job. And I can't see nothing bad about Jim Sheasley neither. Jim's a great guy. He was a good cop. He's a good man. So we got a good team in the city of Tonawanda. I truly believe that if people went and voted this time, it didn't matter who was in power. Whoever was in power, if it had an R or D, in my opinion, people wanted to blame somebody for the conditions that they're in. Today with utilities, insurance, mortgage rates, I can go on and on and on, but the utilities and food, everything has gone up. And why haven't the gas prices gone down in Western Europe? They've gone down peanuts compared to some parts of the country. Americans
because of local taxes.
Right. Well, I know that, but I'm just saying.
And that's the county executive and Governor Hochul.
And another thing is the county executive throwing money around like he is. He shouldn't be allowed to just throw that around without a vote, in my opinion. But I could see if he doesn't run for office, you'll see Kevin Harvick run in line. He'll win that office. But I don't fear the midterms as much as people do at this time because, we're talking about big blue states. But one thing we have to do, in my opinion, especially in New York State and blue states, is they're giving people licenses and they're asking whether you want to register to vote. But if you heard what Poloncarz said the other day, he said you can't vote if you're undocumented. He didn't say if you're an American citizen. He said if you're undocumented. So that means, in my eyes, I'm no lawyer, but that means you got to have some type of documentation, like a Social Security card or a license, to be able to vote. And I believe that's what New York State's doing. They said about 50% of the vote in New York City was from people that weren't born in America. That's got to be looked into, because I see shady things happen. I really do. And if we don't get Elise in there, I could tell you the state's done, and I'm going to have to move out of here. But I can tell you one more thing. My sister's mentally handicapped, so I take care of her. So she gets food stamps. She gets about $300, not quite a month. Now, that helps, and I do take her shopping and stuff. What happens when she doesn't get that? Guess who pays for that? It's me. I got to come up with it to help pay for her to live. That's a burden on all families. I mean, I don't get food stamps, but I can see where people are upset.
So, Dan, let me ask you then the question, because I think this is part of it. So, Trump's the shutdown of the government. Who do you blame?
I think at first maybe you would have thought that you would blame the Democrats, but I think that the Democrats had a better messaging. I don't think Trump was out there enough to try to explain what he's trying to prevent that $1.5 trillion money going to. Supposedly most of that money is supposed to go to immigrants, illegals. So, I don't think the messaging was great on Trump's part. I think they got to go out there, and they're going to have to, if Trump wants to win this midterm, he's going to have to go out there all the time, every day, and fight for everybody that's running. Because you know what's going to happen if he doesn't win the midterm, they're going to impeach him, and they might be successful this time around. I hate to say that.
So, Carl, here's a guy who's a conservative, who he believes in the conservative philosophy, but he has a sister who needs assistance, and blames our messaging. What do you think?
I think he's absolutely right. I think
he is absolutely right.
The Democrats are far more effective at messaging, not just on this issue, but on most issues. Republicans are always seeming to play catch-up and not using their strongest cards in the card game. And it's not only baffling, it's very frustrating to me that they do this all the time, and they allow Democrats to get the high ground. Dan is absolutely right on that, and that's how a lot of people feel. I will say this, though. He brought up he made a statement that a lot of people make and live by, and that is, I don't vote the party, I vote the person. When I first got involved in politics, I had a mentor who advised me about going door to door and putting together messaging. And Bob Davis will know this guy very well because he worked for him. And that was the late state senator Jim McFarland.
Yep.
And Jim said to me, when you go to somebody's door and they say, well, what are you, Republican or Democrat? And then they say, well, I don't vote the person, I vote the party. He said, what you want to tell them is, okay, fine, you vote the person, but you get the party. Because the most important vote that person makes is to organize the legislative body on the first day of the new year.
Vote.
And that sets up everything. That sets up who the chairman of the committees are going to be, what legislation is going to get passed. And so, you may vote the person, but you're going to get the party. And people need to know that. Every time you vote for a Democrat, even if it's for a local office, and you say they're a good guy, they're doing a good job, you're strengthening the Democrat infrastructure and you're strengthening the Democrat farm system. Because that person who's mayor or council, tomorrow may be a county legislator, the day after that may be a state legislator, and the day after that may be, the county executive. That's what you're doing. You're strengthening the Democrat farm system.
The Democrats do it well, Carl. Take a look at Amherst. 3 members of the town board get a paycheck from Erie County government.
So, Dan,
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that, but I got to tell you that it's hard to tell the parties apart today in New York State. They're pretty close lines. It's really hard to tell them apart, other than they got an RD. The truth is.
Well, I don't think that's the case right now. I mean, take a look at what's going on in the Democratic Party in New York State. A socialist communist got elected in New York City on Tuesday night. He is the leader of the Democratic Party in New York State, and there is a clear difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party.
So, Dan, wait a second, guys. I want to ask
real
Dan.
Quick. I agree with that, but I want to just say that I'm talking about local. I'm not talking about statewide.
But Dan, you're still on the line, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm listening.
So, again, Dan, it's important for us to know why you voted for who you voted. But you hear the arguments back and forth. It is true. You can say you're voting for the individual, but you do get the party. And look, we have held a position as the Conservative Party in Erie County for decades that it's not about whether you have a D or an R in front of your name. It's about your philosophy. But unfortunately, that has changed over the years. So, first of all, it's changed in the fact that the Democrats who are in control are picking more Democrats further to the left. That's the first major change. They're not picking conservative Democrats anymore. Secondly, they're usurping power. As you've heard Carl and Bob argue back and forth, it's all about usurping power and then using the power their way. So how do we convince a voter like you that your vote means more on the conservative line? Our slogan.
Well,
how do we do that?
Well, the truth is, I vote conservative the majority of the time, but there's many reasons why I voted the way I did for the city of Tonawanda. But I'll tell you, I was campaigning for Trump in 2016. I was the only one on a certain radio station that said he's going to win in a landslide. They nicknamed me Landslide Dan. In fact, my computer would hand me in studio for the whole for an hour or so. But I can tell you, I called the radio a million times. I've been trumping Trump since the beginning. I knew he was going to run 30 years ago. I will tell you, Hardwick said the other day on a different radio station that he said the reason why he doesn't like Trump, because I can't stand people that are turncoats. The reason why he doesn't like Trump, his main reason was tariffs. Well, I got to tell you, when he actually jumped ship, tariffs had nothing to do with Trump. He wasn't really talking about tariffs at that time, that moment. If he was, it was very little compared to this term. It's much more better, and I hope he wins the Supreme Court decision, because if he doesn't, then I think that's going to hurt America big time. But I don't like a person that's got so-called core conservative values and then turns and runs the Democrats. And I think that was a power grab, because Kevin knew that if he went over with Marky Boy, he'd gain power, and he would eventually get the seat that Marky has, which I believe he probably will win that seat.
Political opportunist, Dan. That's all he is. Dan, right. I got to ask you a question. You sound like a very informed voter. You can pay attention even at the local level. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'm proud of as the Amherst Republican chairman is that every one of our candidates this year got the conservative endorsement. And every one of the Democrats got the working families endorsement. And Dan, I'm going to ask you, do you know what the Working Families Party stands for, what they represent, what their platform is?
From the last I knew, they were like communism. It was like communists. That's what I always thought they were, the working party. But I don't really know the exact what are they.
They certainly have moved into that direction. There's just no question that they've moved. So Carl has to leave us after this soft break. So we got a few more words from Carl. Dan, you can stay on the line, but Carl, go right ahead. What do you think of this conversation?
There are so many variables that go into people's decision to vote. But again, I think it starts off with how are they registered. That is just a huge determinant and speaks volumes about why the Republican Party has to stop losing ground in Erie County and New York State and ceding all of these votes to the Democrats. As I said, I think that Trump is a lightning rod, and that's good and bad, and sometimes it's ugly. And the Democrats have effectively used that lightning rod to get their vote out and motivate their voters. And so, again, as I said earlier, the Republican Party has got to figure out between now and the midterms how they get the MAGA votes out next year when Trump's not on the ballot, and then how they do it again in 28 when he's not on the ballot. If they do that, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. If they don't, I think next year we can take a beating.
Let me ask one question. Now they're talking about Trump wants them to get rid of that filibuster, and I kind of agree what he's saying. At first, I thought that maybe we shouldn't do that, but the thing is, you know that the Democrats are going to do it as soon as they get in there. So why not take advantage of that, do it, and pass some good legislation and hope that'll bring votes on our side?
Dan, that's a double-edged sword. And remember, Harry Reid, the majority leader in the Senate, the Democrat majority leader, did away with the filibuster for appointing federal judges. And what did that get the Democrats? It got them 3 conservative Supreme Court justices with life tenure on the Supreme Court. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen if they get rid of the filibuster, because the day will come when the Democrats are in control again. They will put Puerto Rico on as a state. That's 2 more Democrat senators.
How about D.C.?
They will add D.C. That's 2 more Democrat senators. They will undo all of Trump's executive orders, and they will undo all of the Republican legislation that was passed when the Republicans were in the majority. And so, and they'll pack the Supreme Court too, Dan.
They'll increase the size of it, Carl.
But Trump
I think it's a very dangerous road to go down.
But Trump's point, he's saying that if they get in there, because how radical they become, they're going to do that anyway, no matter what. That's what he's trying to tell people, and I kind of agree with him. I think they're going to do it.
Well, the problem is if we still have the filibuster to stop it, though. Okay, they're going to try to do it, but if you have the filibuster, you can tie it up. If we do away with the filibuster, they've got an open field when they do take power again.
So it's a bad idea, then.
It's a bad idea.
I think it's a real bad idea, because the day will come when Republicans are in the minority, and if that filibuster is not there to protect the minority, which is what the purpose of it was, they will run roughshod over us, and they will do all the things I mentioned they would do and more.
Well, Carl, we are a minority. When you look at enrollment across the country, the Democrats outnumber us significantly.
So this has been a very interesting discussion going back and forth. So, look, the election we just went through was disappointing in a lot of ways. We did win, as I pointed out, we did win in Lancaster. We did win in Orchard Park. We did win in... where else? In Hamburg. Hamburg, big. Yep. So those are the wins. But we have to concentrate. We have to look at these numbers. So, Bob, I know you've got lots of numbers in front of you. So tell me what's your opinion of where we stand, how these races came about. Let's talk first about the mayor of Buffalo. James Gardner was everywhere. He did everything you could ask a candidate to do, and he comes up with 22.5% of the vote. I mean, to me, the answer is Gardner did everything possible.
He spent a bunch of money, too.
His own money.
His own.
Put his money where his mouth is. He spent his own money, but more importantly, he went into every community. He worked like crazy. My opinion is this is our fault. This is our fault for decades of not trying to make inroads into the city of Buffalo.
We haven't elected a Republican mayor since 1960. Think about it.
But
right now, the enrollment in the city of Buffalo, 98,000 Democrats, 15,000 Republicans. There's more people registered blank, not affiliated with a party, than there are registered Republicans in the city of Buffalo.
That's true in the county of Erie.
That is correct. That is correct. I look at Amherst. There's 37,000 Democrats in Amherst. There's 23,000 Republicans and 21,000 people registered as a blank. I mean, those are tough numbers to overcome. I look at what happened, and I got to look at, when I'm looking at numbers, Ralph, obviously, I'm diving deep into the Amherst numbers. A year ago, Harris-Trump, Harris got 60.4% of the vote in Amherst a year ago to 39.5% for Trump. The margin was over 14,000, 14,500 votes in Amherst.
That we lost by with Trump.
With Trump. And this year, Gagliardo loses the supervisor's race by 1,800. That is a significant swing that'll elect Elise Stefanik governor next year if that happens again.
It is a significant swing, and I give you a lot of credit for it and the candidates that you chose. But that's what I'm saying about the city of Buffalo. When you leave the city of Buffalo alone for 60 years and don't really engage, you're going to have what you had. Here we had an excellent candidate. We had... the comparison couldn't have been any, more clear, the comparison between Gardner and Sean Ryan.
No question.
And we had a candidate willing to invest $400,000 of his own money, be out every single day in that community, go into every single neighborhood, and yet comes out with 22.5% of the vote. Now, look, I give James Gardner a great deal of credit, but he sacrificed. He sacrificed for us. We can't let it go. We have to follow up on it.
You're totally right. I mean, people knew that there was a viable alternative in the city. I mean, Sean Ryan is the Buffalo Mondani.
He is.
No question about it. He voted with him, as a senator. He voted the same way as Mondani did in the state assembly on the same issues. There's no question. James Gardner, is the best thing that's happened to the Republican Party in the city of Buffalo in a long, long time. And we need to capitalize on that investment, his investment.
We absolutely do. We have a caller. So, Rich in Buffalo. Rich, are you on?
Yes, Ralph. Thanks for taking my call. And, gentlemen, this is Rich from Buffalo, formerly of North Collins. You may remember working together over the years. And Carl, I missed him, but I had to dig for the number. I had to call the library, actually, to find out your number. But, Carl, if you're listening in your car, hi. Listen, a couple of things I've been thinking about in analyzing it, and I know it's going to touch on a few things that you have already covered with Elise and so on. They're disparate. They're different things that I've looked at. Well, one is, let's go back just real quick. The Senate, I've been thinking about this for a while. Since 1977 with Jimmy Griffin, there's never been a Buffalo mayor elected without having first been a New York State senator. All right, so that needs to be analyzed. Why is that the stepping stone? And in the latest iteration, the senators in the majority, the last three were in the minority. However, they all had served in the Common Council. So there's something there. There's something, this is the base. Okay, we can dissect it. I like what you're doing, Chairman, with the postmortem. I think this is a wonderful show it's been so far, and Elise is so dynamic. Carl, of course, and the rest of you folks. So, guys, the other thing I'd like to mention, and I looked at this a while ago, Ralph, is I looked at all of the council districts in Buffalo for the breakdown of enrollment. And, of course, there's nothing that's even competitive with a Republican to Democrat, okay, head-to-head, like the Delaware district used to be. But we know that Kevin Helfer was, I believe, a conservative and was elected as a Republican in the University District. And we know that Jimmy Griffin, who I just alluded to, was elected as on the conservative line. Now, South has more conservative, how should I say, more of a plurality of districts that have conservative over working families. I didn't see this so much in any other district. Now, we know there are these conservative Democrats, Mickey Kearns, et cetera. For years, they've been Democrat, but I think now's the time to say, look, we want an inroad in Buffalo. We want a conservative or Republican council member who can then be the first minority leader of the council since Kevin Helfer. And so let's look at those comparisons, and I think that somebody's going to have to come over. Now, I don't know if the mayor now is going to go back to the council presidency. I don't know if they're going to elect him, but if not, he should be courted to become a conservative or Republican. He's solid in that district, whoever is going to be there, and that's my second point. As far as our friend and neighbor Kathy Hochul, if you look at all of the races that or all of the offices she's had, she has been either appointed to them first before being elected. I'm talking Hamburg Councilman, Town Clerk. I believe she had been appointed to those. The governor might have, whatever. And then, or been on a ticket and on the coattails of a Cuomo and selected by the Democratic Party to be, like as Elise called her, the accidental governor eventually, but to be a do-nothing LT. Or LG. So she's I think Congressman, she was elected on her own, but everything else she's been appointed to and handpicked by party, either the various people or the party. And so those are three items.
Well, let me, if I can. We're talking about the mayor's race and the issue in the city of Buffalo with the Republican being successful. I ask you this question.
Sure.
James Gardner spent a lot of money on this race. He articulated the issues. He got his message out there.
Absolutely.
And he gets 22% of the vote?
22.5%.
22.5%. How did that happen? When you look at what happened just 4 years ago in the race for mayor of Buffalo, a candidate won by write-in. By write-in.
Right.
So the voters understood that. They had to understand they had to go in and write in, which most voters have never, ever done. But that's how Mayor Brown got reelected. He didn't get reelected on the Democratic line. He got reelected on a write-in vote. And voters understood that. Why didn't they understand the Gardner message?
Again, I believe it's because the Republicans and conservatives have. Okay.
We got a church. Are you in church?
No,
we are praying.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a cell phone that we had trouble shutting
I don't
off.
have to go to mass today. Oh my goodness.
All right, Rich. I appreciate all your comments.
I just want to make one. Well, I mean, he asked a question, Bob.
Yep.
I don't know. But the thing is, the Trump is, even though he wasn't on the ballot, he's the elephant in the room or the gorilla in the room for all these. He's the boogeyman, right, wrong, or indifferent. Last thing I just wanted to mention to you as a lawyer, Ralph, we concentrate a lot on, well, we got to get this office, we got to get that office. Incidentally, the comptroller's office should be an easier lift for Buffalo. Okay, especially if you've got a sitting council member. They need to make inroads here and do all the things that all of you guys have been talking about are, I believe, all on target. The other thing is a legal thing. You know how the Republicans challenged the reapportionment and went to a Supreme Court justice where in Steuben County or something, and they won it. And so they had to redistrict. The thing is, we've got a home rule article in the Constitution, but it's overridden by this liberal court of appeals and so on now. As a lot of those things, when these localities are protesting certain changes or they want to make certain home rule messages, and they get shot down because the court of appeals says that there's a compelling state interest that overrides the home rule article in the New York State Constitution.
All right. Rich, we've got to take a hard break now. I appreciate you calling in. I know that you're a student of this. I know that you really studied this and you've been part of it for a long, long time, but we've got to take a hard break. One last thing I want to say, Bob and Russ, is what do you cross endorsements. We had cross endorsements at the top of the ticket. The sheriff didn't have a race. 2 county court judges were cross endorsed, and the family court judge was cross endorsed. To me, that has an effect down the ballot.
I think it does. I mean, I think it's another reason why you have a 30% turnout in a local election here. But Ralph, something that we should talk on a future show about is there's not going to be local elections very soon because the Democrats control the state Senate, they control the state Assembly, and they got a governor that's a Democrat. And now the next time there's a town board race, the cycle this year is going to be in a presidential race.
All right, these will be topics for next time. Thank you, everyone.